Today's episode, we're going to be talking about child trafficking and the pandemic. Last week, they found a truckload of babies on a truck. Where were they trafficked from? Is this the first time? I don't think so. This has been happening for years. People smuggling young people into the country for sex, to use them as slaves, and to sell them. How many of these young people are being sent to brothels, sent to car wash? Many of them are being sent to cannabis factories. How many of these young people you've walked across the street and not even known that they've been trafficked into the country? Many of these children are being put on porn sites for perverted men and women to look at. Many of the children are being sent on yachts with millionaires for sexual activity. And something else that no one wants to talk about is the blood sacrifice that a lot of these young children are being used for. A lot of them are being sacrificed. How many young people have been found in the Thames or in the canal with their torsos or other body parts being found where they've been killed and murdered by these evil people?
Crime is crime, villains are villains, and they all need locking up. My name is Peter Blexley. I'm a former Scotland Yard detective. Human trafficking and exploitation is a huge problem in the United Kingdom. People that are exploited include those who are fleeing the war in Ukraine and other people that travel to the UK in small boats. The numbers are on the rise. This problem is not going away, and it quite simply must be tackled. The criminal exploitation of adults has risen by 30% in the last year. And in recent months, the sexual exploitation of women has risen by 24%. Significant numbers and a considerable problem. Albanian gangs have got a firm grip on the drug dealing, predominantly cocaine, and they shamelessly recruit children into their ranks, where they exploit them by making them distribute the drugs on their behalf. These criminals will recruit migrants who have crossed the channel in small boats and suck them into their criminality. They also go to France, where they find rich pickings amongst the migrant camps for new recruits. They are ruthless, they are indiscriminate, and they don't treat these people like human beings, they treat them like commodities. The British Transport Police realised the scale of the problem of county lines drug dealing and set up a dedicated unit in 2019. Since then, they have arrested 2,250 people for this drug distribution network. 40% of those people arrested were under the age of 19, exploited with no choice but to be drawn, forced, cajoled, bullied and recruited into this criminality. When the county lines issue first came to light, the drugs that were predominantly being trafficked were heroin, cannabis, cocaine. But of late, another more odious drug, a more addictive drug, a more damaging drug, fentanyl, has been increasingly moved around the country. The National Crime Agency have had a long-running operation to tackle drug dealers called Operation Venetic. To give you an idea of the scale of the problem they are facing, a man called John Keat was arrested, who ran a drugs laboratory and a dealing network that netted £10 million a month. He and others were arrested and jailed and received considerable sentences. When it comes to sexual exploitation, young women and girls who have fled the war in Ukraine are, unfortunately, at risk, as are other young girls, many of whom have been through the care system, and others who come from what I describe as less than perfect home backgrounds. Children exploited for the sexual perversion of others. There have been a number of child exploitation scandals in this country in recent years, none more notorious than the Rotherham scandal. Unfortunately, people simply looked the other way because many of the offenders came from a particular minority background. Police officers did not do their job because they didn't want to be accused of being racist. Shame on them all. It has long been suspected that women and girls are being trafficked from Bulgaria into the southeast of London for sexual purposes, to be put into brothels and basically enslaved within the sex industry. Law enforcement have often discussed among themselves a Romanian mafia who are believed to be exploiting people, trafficking them into the UK, again for sexual purposes. The good news is law enforcement are aware of these gangs. The bad news is some of them still operate.
And the van's empty, buddy. Take a seat for me. Take a seat, mate.
Another very unsavoury aspect of human trafficking are people who exploit people through their labour. They force them to work in agriculture, hospitality, car washes, food processing, nail bars, whilst often keeping these people imprisoned in unsanitary, cramped and entirely unsuitable accommodation. Slavery in 2023 in the UK. It's almost beyond comprehension. Scotland has a drug problem all of its own, unfortunately, and a lot of its drugs come from Spain, the Netherlands, and even China. Although in the UK, Liverpool remains the city through which most of Scotland's drugs are trafficked. There are 6 organised crime groups operating north of the border that have been identified by law enforcement as being predominant in the illegal drugs industry. Like in so many other places, these gangs enforce their rules and protect their territory through violence. That is their currency. And as long as the drugs industry is left in their hands, this problem will continue. Since 2021, there has been a 300% increase in crimes related to brothels. The primary perpetrators and their victims are predominantly Slovakian or Romanian. When it comes to labour exploitation in Scotland, the victims are overwhelmingly from Vietnam, but also from Latvia and China. They are forced to work in nail bars, drug cultivation, in other words, cannabis farms, and agriculture. Those who exploit them are often from the same country as the victims. And of course, they have to move their money around that they earn illegally. And so they exploit the airports to shift the people in and move the money around. They also involve themselves in drug and cigarette importation. Of course, all illegal and all sold on the black market, invariably through people who are being exploited. In Northern Ireland, there is a notorious gang that call themselves the Firm. They like to think that they rule County Armagh, and they do have close links to the Kinahan cartel. And through their contacts, they distribute drugs, of course, for huge profit, but they also have their fingers in the pies of an awful lot of different types of crime. Another Northern Irish gang calls themselves the Russians gang, but they are predominantly Lithuanians. They have been responsible for an increase in heroin consumption and, of course, addiction and misery. They've utilised drone technology, get your drugs delivered by drone, thereby cutting out the middleman. In Northern Ireland, those who are forced into the sex industry, trafficked into that industry, are often Romanian, Bulgarian, Albanian, and ethnic Roma. These gangs are known to have exploited social media platforms to recruit people. They lure them in. According to the latest figures from the Office of National Statistics, 550 people were exploited for labour purposes in Northern Ireland. Many of them were forced into shoplifting gangs, a very lucrative business, and others were used in the cultivation of illegal drugs, predominantly cannabis. Paramilitary groups that still exist in Northern Ireland are known to exploit children. With all the problems that the police service of Northern Ireland faces, that constant and very worrying terrorism threat, they now have these really quite modern, recent crimes to tackle with. The enslaving, the trafficking, and the exploitation of human beings. Fortunately, the government have acknowledged and do accept that human trafficking, modern slavery, is a problem. They've invested £10 million for research over a number of years so that law enforcement can better understand this problem. By understanding it, who commits the crime, who are the victims of this crime, then they will be better equipped to tackle it, to find those who are responsible, to free those people who are held captive in the most disgusting environments. There is a responsibility upon us all to ensure that we do not become victims of crime. Look out for those who may be vulnerable in your community. Children, those who are out a lot, those who get excluded from school, or those who don't go to school very much of their own accord. That is when gangs will prey upon them. That is when they are at their most vulnerable. That is when they will be exploited and potentially enslaved. Look out for yourselves, but look out for your fellow human beings.
Un copil am avut 12 ani, dar eram doar o sclavă pentru ei.
In every corner of the UK, women and girls are being kept as slaves and sold for sex.
They are brainwashed, they are programmed.
Romanian girls are big business.
I have a 13-year-old girl right here who's desperately trying to get back to her 52-year-old lover boy.
You're actually police officers. It's okay, don't worry, don't be scared.
With police in the UK struggling to cope, I'm on a journey through Romania to find out why this brutal trade is thriving.
Sunt domnișoara, am 15 ani și ieri am fost sechestrată de către un domn. Veniți repede, vă rog.
Have you got some clothes? Where's your clothes, more importantly?
This is a rescue mission.
So there's 4 Romanian girls in there, all basically in the lingerie. It's just being used as a brothel.
24 missed calls.
They've been constantly going off.
Police suspect the women have been trafficked to the UK and forced into prostitution. They take them to safety.
Who does she pay the rent to then?
That girl is back in Romania.
Do you know her name? The stories are similar, but they're not. They are all saying they pay different money, they're all saying they pay different people. It does raise concerns for me that someone is potentially in control of that address.
But the girls won't say they've been trafficked. And because sex work is legal in the UK, the officers now have no choice but to take them back to the house. This is a familiar story. I've come to Romania to find out why so many girls are being trafficked and why they're so reluctant to accept help.
Okay, you come in.
At this children's shelter, they've all been lured into the sex trade by traffickers pretending to be in love with them.
The lover boy method is the most horrible method of recruiting girls. There are recruiters in the schoolyards. They are planted in the school. And they talk to the girls. This guy comes and tells them, I love you so much, you are so beautiful, you are so smart. They want to believe it. It's easy to believe.
Mami, mi se termină gelul de duș și șamponul.
I have a 13-year-old girl right here who's desperately trying to get back to her 52-year-old lover boy. When she runs away, she tells the police, I want to go to my lover boy. He's 52 years old. I love him. They're getting younger and younger. The younger the girl, the easier it is for the trafficker to scare her. Now we have girls as young as 12. When they get to us, they started at 10.
After years of being trafficked in Romania, the girls are often brought to the UK, where there's more money to be made.
Am dat în hemoragie. Pur și simplu nu puteam să merg, nici cu în genunchi nu mai puteam să merg. Eram pe cale să mor.
Elena was rescued from a flat after being left for dead by her traffickers.
I've never seen anyone in that state before. She was repeatedly beaten. She had lots of wounds on her body. One of the consultants had estimated that she'd only had 48 hours to live.
She was brought to the UK by a man she thought she loved. We're meeting just a few months after her escape, and I can see how traumatised she is.
Același lucru, să te culci cu diverse bărbați.
How many men used to come each day?
Să zic așa, aproximativ, dacă vineau 10, 20, eram spionată din toate punctele de vedere. El știa tot. Câți bani se fac, cum se fac. Într-o zi, dacă făceam 1000 de lire, toți banii care îi făceam, îi trimiteam lui.
Sex trafficking is rife in the UK. I don't think we've got anywhere near the true picture of how many victims there are there. It's got harder for us because it could be anywhere. We don't know where to go to, we don't know where to go and visit. The houses, it's just a normal house on a normal street. People will have neighbours who are victims of sex trafficking.
Detective Colin Ward finds women he thinks has been trafficked.
We're actually police officers. Yeah, it's okay, it's okay. Don't worry, don't be scared.
He tries to convince them to talk to him.
Where are you living? You're not.
It's his best chance at catching the traffickers. But it rarely works.
If there is anything going on where you're not safe, you need to let us know. Romanian women in general, there's very little trust in the police. I've been doing this for 14 years now. I can count on one hand probably how many victims have gone, I'm a victim, I need help.
I want to understand why Romanian women distrust the police so much. And so I've come to meet a family with a remarkable story. They're celebrating. Their daughter Andrea has just returned home after being trafficked 3 years ago.
Am fost doar un copil, am avut 12 ani. Da, eram doar o sclavă pentru ei. Făceam tot ce îmi spuneau. Au început să fie nevoie de bani. Și știau că singura opțiune este să mă prostituez.
Andrea's parents say they knew who'd taken her, but the police wouldn't help them.
La poliție când mergeam, nu auzeam decât că ei nu au ce să facă, că nu au personal ca să poată să meargă să o caute. Mergeam, ieșeam în oraș și o căutam cu mașina.
Eventually, she decided to rescue her daughter alone. She arranged to meet the trafficker by setting up a fake drug deal.
Deci aici e locul unde am găsit-o pe portbagajul mașinii. Și a deschis portbagajul, a tras-o jos. Ea era drogată. Vreau să vă spun că în portbagaj era drogată, nici nu putea să stea în picioare. Și acum, dacă mi-aduc aminte, văd acele momente în fața ochilor. Nu știam cum copilul meu era acasă și cum am găsit-o.
Can you imagine somebody go to the school, take your child, you go to the police, nothing happened, you go next day to the city and the drug dealer smile in your face. How do you feel?
The local police force have told us they did look for Andrea and they referred her case to a specialist anti-trafficking team. But then came a case that shocked the country. A 15-year-old girl was kidnapped on her way home from school. This is the call she made to the police.
Sunt domnișoara, am 15 ani și am fost sechestrată de către un domn. Vă rog, veniți repede, nu știu unde sunt.
Ai fost violată?
Da, am fost violată.
She was repeatedly asking, will you come here? Will you send somebody to save me?
Veniți cât mai repede.
And they were mocking her because she didn't know where she is detained.
Ia, uite-te pe...
A venit, veniți repede, vă rog.
Police didn't trace Alexandra's phone call. It would be more than 24 hours before they entered the house. By then, she'd been murdered.
The policemen in Romania, they usually don't pay much attention when a girl is missing because they think it's about human trafficking and the investigation ends here.
How do you feel about the way the police have handled your case?
Poate n-a luat-o ca pe glumă. Dacă luau de serios de prima dată, eu cred că astăzi era aici cu noi.
Here is the candles that people are bringing from all over the country.
Why are people coming from so far?
To make the authorities see that we care about what happened and we expect something to change.
What's happened to her trafficker?
Nothing. Nothing happened to the trafficker. I mean, the mother went and filed a complaint.
Where is he?
But he's at home, doing fine. Yes, in my opinion, he should be charged and sentenced. He's 52 and she's 12.
What needs to change here, Liana?
Trafficking, it's an organized crime. As it is now, the income is high, the risk is low. But if you reverse the equation and you put them in jail for a long time and confiscate everything they have, then it's not going to be that easy to do trafficking. I think that they will think twice.
Over the past year, the Romanian government says it's made efforts to tackle trafficking. There are now tougher sentences for trafficking children. But on the ground, it's made little difference. I get a phone call from Andrea's father, who's working in London.
Hi. Oh.
How are you?
How is your daughter?
They took her again. We find out they are the same guys.
It must be so hard to have this happen again.
Yes, we sold everything, our company from Romania, to save our daughter. To stay home almost 2 years, to stay and save my daughter.
So the minute you left, they came for her?
Exactly.
I feel angry because I hear these stories for 20 years and we should have stopped this by now. The bottom line is that we don't care.
The hotel industry is a wild experience that helps you understand how disconnected the wildly wealthy are. I've seen the darker side of humanity: suicides, murders, spousal abuse, human trafficking. That shit stays with you for a long time. One weekend, a large group of around 60-ish people, they wanted to purchase out the entire hotel so they could just turn it into a giant orgy. The cost to buy out the property was upwards of $250,000 for 2 nights at a time. That says you've got money to spend. They left a nightmare room. Blood, feces, semen stains. One of my bellboys came up and was like, "I've got a black light, I'm curious." He turned it on, and I remember we looked down and saw the stains, we looked to the sides and saw them on the wall. At one point in the bathroom, we looked up and saw them all on the ceiling, and we were just like, how do you do this? This is not human. Were you on the ceiling? I worked as an operations manager for around 10 plus years. I've worked in hotels where the average daily rate is anywhere from like $99 and then all the way up to boutique properties where the average cost is around $1,400 per night. In general, the higher up that price value, the more common it is to be treated like you're less than human. The people who are coming to visit you, famous pop stars and Russian oligarchs, they have a private plane that they get in a private vehicle with all tinted blackout windows. Sometimes they have security squads. They'll snap their fingers at them. Very large sense of entitlement where if they approach the desk, they are the only thing that exists to you in that moment. And that's what they came to expect from that level of entering a luxury hotel. Most people who visit boutique hotels are not coming for business. They're there for pleasure. There was a group of fabulously wealthy individuals. You can definitely get a sense of how much wealth they actually have when they're talking about things like buying a fleet of Boeings in the lobby casually. They would buy out this entire property. They were spending as much as a luxury wedding And it was basically a giant swingers orgy. We'd have people having sex in the pool, people laying on our wine bars naked, a couple having sex on a balcony in plain view. So you're looking up at it, quite an angle. And every single room would have a different theme and a safe word posted outside of the door. The one that stands out to me was there's a mermaid-themed room. It was actually kind of impressive, the details they went, so it was very like under the sea vibe. There was the Wild West room. There was the straight-up BDSM room. One couple we had to talk to while they were naked. They would purposely wait to start having sex until housekeeping wanted to clean the room. They wanted somebody to watch. The day after they had all departed, I got a call from housekeeping saying that one of the showers was busted, and I go take a look at it, and they had hacksawed off the actual shower piece, the shower head, and attached a 4-foot-long anal probe hose to it, with multiple settings on the other end. And that was as disgusting as you can imagine. After all of the drama and mental scarring that we put up with for this orgy buyout group, probably between about 30 staff, I want to say we made $20 in tips. I found myself on more than one occasion getting stuck in awkward situations between husbands, their lovers, and then the actual wife. The worst case scenario was husband and wife shared credit cards naturally, and she started seeing the hotel show up on the books, and she stormed in and like slammed bank statements down. It's like, I know my husband's here, you guys are lying to me, we have to just say, you know what, I'm so sorry, we don't have anyone here by this name. And meanwhile, we could literally hear them having sex upstairs. Apparently she didn't notice the sounds were familiar to her, which might be a sad statement on their marriage, actually. The problem with working with the fabulously wealthy is that they often assume that the staff is there at their beck and call regardless of what the request is. It was really common for the high rollers to approach attractive staff members and essentially just ask them, hey, if I pay you X amount of dollars, will you meet me in my room later tonight and knock my brains out? That's a quote from someone, sadly. We had a very busty, gorgeous front desk woman at one hotel, and someone came down and offered her quite a bit of money in front of management. And at the moment, she naturally declined. I have security cameras in all the halls, and seeing that person sneak out around 2 a.m. was definitely a little suspicious. The most shocking example was an incident where the wedding was around 2 p.m.-ish that day. Come nightfall, one of our event staff slept with the wife and ended up getting caught. It turned into quite a big deal with screaming and shouting and all this stuff. He hid in a bathroom in a supply closet until the heat died down, and then he just walked into the front office and clocked out like nothing ever happened. His mom happened to be in charge of events, so she made sure he didn't get terminated. The demographics of the staffs who work at hotels are usually pretty evenly split. If you're an attractive white person who speaks English quite well, you're probably going to be reservations, front desk, something visual. If you're not of that ethnicity, just because they have an accent and that might not present well to your guests, your most likely bet is that you're going to get placed in housekeeping. If you're working at a decent property, you could probably get $10 to $15 an hour as a front desk host. If you're housekeeping, you're maybe getting 9 to 10. It was wildly unfair. We were actually advised to handle our housekeeping teams under the concept of divide and conquer, telling them, oh, well, so-and-so's team's much better than yours. You should really try to keep up with the Mexican team. It creates that toxic environment. This prevented the entire housekeeping team from uniting together and presenting concerns. And I saw that kind of model in multiple hotels. In retrospect, I can safely say that the hours they made me work, the wild situations you'd run into, it's a miracle that I never got in a really bad car accident commuting. It slowly burns you out in a way that you can't explain until you're out of it. You just kind of know something's wrong and you're not happy. The biggest thing that the public doesn't understand about the hotel industry is that there are wild things happening behind closed doors every single day. Fabulously wealthy individuals are wild. Everything happens behind closed doors at hotels.
Now I want you to watch this clip where a young girl is innocently sitting in her house and she nearly gets kidnapped. Luckily her mother came in time to save her. Watch this clip.
Digo, yo estaba revisando aquí, ya aquí veo que pasa un carro, ese carro blanco, ese es prácticamente el que más adelante.
Ese prácticamente, vas a ver lo que pasa ahí. Mira. O sea, como que estaban sondeando, si me entiendes.
Que usted ya revisó usted.
Sí, ya revisé. Mira,
Laurita, ven acá, mamita. Venga, mi amor, tranquila.
Tranquila, mi amor.
Ya, ¿usted por qué cerró la puerta aquí?
Por ahí, o sea, vine hacia la sala y vi que... Tranquila.
La niña está nerviosa todavía. Ya, aquí está el carro, ¿no? Aquí
sí, ahí también, mira lo que pasa ahí, mira.
Ya, ahí llegaron. Ahí llegaron.
No, él.
Solo uno.
Es uno. Pero, mira, vas a ver que ahí saca él como una radio.
Pero él no vino para acá.
No, él nunca se acercó.
O sea, entonces era el campanero,
¿no? Sí. Mira.
Ya. Ya, mira. Ya.
Mira.
Aquí están, ellos son.
Ellos son. Ellos, los mismos. ¿Ya llamaste a tu abuelo?
Sí, ya.
Ya. Mira.
¿Ya ellos que llamaron? ¿Le llamaron a usted o qué?
No. Allá la niña es. Mi amor, ¿qué fue que te preguntaron ahí?
Que si estaba mamá o papá.
Ay, Dios mío.
Mira, ahí fue cuando me preguntó. Ahí fue que usted entró nomás a verme, usted no respondió nada.
Ya usted entró nomás directamente a ver.
Sí.
Mira, la niña viene.
Ya,
y ahí me estaban ofreciendo.
¿Qué era? Planilla de...
Y no sé qué. Entonces, porque no coincidía que el número del código con la...
Y en esa planilla que cargaban datos de aquí en la casa, ¿sí cargaban datos?
Sí, cargaban datos aquí. Me imagino que muchos las que... Y ahí le digo que... O sea, me dice, pero compare con su número de cédula. Y yo entro a ver la cédula.
¿Qué le ofrecieron? Que ellos le ofrecieron solucionar el
claro,
problema.
Sí, para aquí mismo, en un teléfono dice que ellos tienen ahí conexión directa.
Llave, lo que siempre le digo, póngale llave.
La tenía, pero es que ya pues el chico arreglando los bidones y todo lo demás acá entre la...
Mira, aquí dejó abierta. Ya dejó abierta la puerta.
Sí.
Ya cuando usted sale después, usted no se da cuenta.
No me doy cuenta, se ve así como que el seguro por fuera.
Ya, y el otro y el campanero desapareció.
Sí, pero mira, es que él hace las señas.
Ahí la llama, mi amor, ¿qué le dicen? ¿Qué es lo que le dicen a ella? ¿Qué le dicen?
Me dicen que salga porque me van a dar un helado.
¿Y aquí se da cuenta la cámara?
Mira, el man como que se fijó, dijo aquí, bueno. Y mira lo que pasa ahí, mira, el campanero, lo recoge.
Entonces esto, en el carro blanco que pensaban llevarse.
Claro, porque ellos llevan una moto, la niña puede gritar y todo lo demás, pero no, el carro. Ahí es que la abraza mi hijita, pobrecita. Se me erizaba la piel, está ahorita, viendo este video.
Ya, mi amor. No llores. No llores, Laurita, no llores.
Tranquila, mi amor, estás a salvo, mi vida. Perdóname por no ponerle seguro a la puerta, mi amor.
Qué increíble.
Today, children will be sold for sex.
That's horrible. You said this has been going on for a decade. How did you discover the tragedy?
So I was sitting on the Pomona Fairplex emergency intake site processing cases. I had the privilege to work on the federal case management team. I was seeing crisis with children all around me, children screaming for their parents. I've seen children have to be put on suicide watch. And I thought that all these children were going to family members. But seeing the children in crisis, it was clear that was not the case. Then I discovered there were apartment buildings that had 40 children. I discovered a place in Houston, Texas, and this is all the way back in June of 21, where there were more than 300 children released in a 3 square mile. This did not make sense. So there were people sponsoring multiple children from multiple sites. There were sponsors who had accumulated children, and this simply did not make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Right now, the numbers we hear, there are 85,000 unaccompanied children that the DHS has lost track of. Now, the government is supposed to place these kids with a safe sponsor here in the United States. That's what they're supposed to do, correct?
That is what they're supposed to do. However, what was shocking is that over 90% of the sponsors have no legal presence. So they're not citizens, they're not permanent residents, they're not here on a visa, and we're just simply the middleman in this trafficking scheme of delivering children to unvetted sponsors.
Immediately when I got in the car, I knew something was off.
Simone Miller was only 16 when she was kidnapped and trafficked by a man she had just met.
He was just like, I'm a pimp and you're my hoe and I'm gonna take you somewhere. You're gonna be given instructions on what to do and running is not an option.
She was taken to a hotel where other women were being held. Simone says the man who told her he was a rapper when she first met him warned her if she tried to escape, he would kill her mother and her grandmother.
If anybody knows me, like, that's like my weakness, you know, because like my family is all I have.
As days went by, Simone was desperate to get out of this situation.
What can I do? What can I do? And I played along, and I had him thinking like I'm okay with it. You know, I put on this red lingerie.
The pimp let his guard down, and when he took a shower and left his cell phone on the bed, Simone made a quick phone call to her mother.
And I said, Mom, and she said, baby, where are you? And I said, I don't know. I don't know where I'm at, Mom. She just said, tell me what you see, Simone. I said, I'm like looking out the window of this hotel. I said, I see like a 7-Eleven. She's like, okay, what else do you see? I said, I don't know, a Church's chicken. She's like, okay, okay.
Somehow, with that brief description, her entire family hid different locations, searching for Simone until they found her outside of a 7-Eleven. Her captor was inside buying cigarettes, unaware his victim was about to be rescued.
All I could think was when this man gets out of this 7-Eleven, it's gonna be trouble.
Despite everything he put her through, Simone protected him, telling her family he wasn't the man who kidnapped her.
I still know that it wasn't right what he did, but I got in the car with him, you know what I mean? And I just didn't want them to kill him in front of me. And I kept saying, no, that's not him, that's not him.
It's been many years since that horrific experience. Simone is now a crisis interventionist at Teen Project, a nonprofit that helps survivors of human trafficking.
It's healing. Subconsciously, I'm healing by helping.
Hundreds of child predators are arrested this month as part of the DOJ's takedown of the largest known child exploitation website.
And this individual, the sole motivation was to inflict pain on another, and the journey to that.
We've been working on the story of a federal agent, a Border Patrol agent, now facing federal charges.
Welcome to Video was dismantled after the raid and arrest of the underground site's administrator, 23-year-old South Korean national Jong Woo-sun. In an operation by officials in the US, the UK, South Korea and Germany, hundreds of suspects have been charged across the world. More than 20 minors who were being abused by users of the site have been rescued. Officials say they seized more than 250,000 videos. That's staggering, with disturbing references to abuse of very young children and even toddlers. At a press conference, officials said it was one of the first times seeing cryptocurrency in trafficking child pornography.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jessie Liu. I'm the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Thank you all for being here for this very important announcement of significant actions to protect children from sexual exploitation. I'm joined today by key partners in the federal government's fight against those who exploit the most vulnerable among us.
That's the Department of Justice announcing that they've just managed to shut down the dark web's largest child pornography site in October of 2019. That fact still rings true as I'm recording this video in 2023. 337 paedophiles who produced, uploaded and downloaded content from said site were arrested and some jailed as the result of an operation carried out by the UK's National Crime Agency, the IRS, the Homeland Security, the Korean National Police and the German Federal Criminal Police. Although 337 arrests were made, there were roughly 1.3 million users at the height of the website's popularity, with 360,000 videos being downloaded. And believe it or not, in the words of the investigators themselves, if it wasn't for the blockchain, we wouldn't have even seen those 337 arrests. Could the investigation have gone a different way if not for the blockchain? Maybe, but the tactics used in the months-long investigation relied heavily on it, and so without the blockchain, there would have been no case. In spite of the fact that the Department of Justice eventually took down the largest child pornography site on the dark web in 2019, the origins of this case can be traced all the way back to 2008. July 24th, 2008. Freedom Hosting, a specialist web hosting service, emerges on the Tor browser. It offers a plethora of hidden services to only those who can navigate their way around the darkest side of the internet. Back in 2008, there wasn't many who could. Some notable services: Tormail, which allowed users to send and receive email anonymously to email addresses inside and outside the Tor network. HackBB, a hidden internet forum specializing in buying stolen credit cards, skimming ATMs, and hacking computers, servers, and accounts. And then there was the Hidden Wiki. This held a directory of links to other hidden websites within the Tor browser. Freedom Hosting would eventually be home to half of all Tor sites that were available at that time. It began to attract many visitors for both the right and wrong reasons. For example, those who wanted to communicate in secret could do so, but a wide range of criminals had a field day, and the authorities couldn't do anything about it because, to put it simply, for a while, they had no way of knowing anyone's true identity. Although for years, the web hosting service remained in the shadows of the dark web, away from the majority of the general public, that would all change in October of 2011.
Dear citizens of the Internet, over the past decade, the Internet has become an increasingly integral part of our daily lives. It has evolved into the catalyst behind free media, free speech, and global communication. Since its inception, the World Wide Web has become a prominent medium for individuals such as journalists and activists alike. However, a great injustice lurks beneath the surface. A vile infestation of abhorrent animals have been growing, parasitically spreading like cancer. Unknown to the world, it has consumed and victimized innocent children as well as adults. The growing trade of child pornography has become a major problem. While government organizations have put much effort into the dismantling of individuals and websites dedicated to this repulsive trade, the providers of this content have grown frustrated and moved their trades into a much seedier place known as the Darknet, a network dedicated only to the iniquities that are outcasted by the society we strive in. Unfortunately, a potentially benevolent resource has been corrupted by these sick and sadistic abominations of the world. We, Anonymous, have an eternal duty to fight against the social injustices of this world. When we came into this virtual realm, we were disgusted with the content that was provisioned and readily available for the perverted masses. Many of us had lingering traumatic images of the material that these pedophiles were hiding on the Darknet. Anonymous took a pledge to defend the defenseless and fight for the fallen. We rallied an army called the Legion, and armed ourselves with our Chris Hansen cannons. We set out for the great hunt which has become Operation Darknet, also known as To Catch a Predator. We found that a majority of the Darknet pedophiles were using a site called Lolita City. We demanded that the major provider of the host known as Freedom Hosting rid their servers of such reprehensible materials. Unfortunately, to our horror, the owner of Freedom Hosting was the perpetrator for most of the pedophilic content. We are now aware that this provider has over 100 gigabytes of content depicting children being sexually exploited for money and sick thrills that only the underlying insects of this world could take pleasure in. While successful in our onslaught to identify users and take down the hosting provider of this unacceptable content, the Darknet is a vast sea with many providers. However, we fully intend to make it uninhabitable for these disgusting degenerates to exist without the fear of prosecution or death. This is our message, our manifesto. You may hold us to every last word, for we will never turn a deaf ear upon the screams of innocent children. You know who you are, and so do we. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
On the 14th of October 2011, a member of the anonymous hacking group had been browsing the hidden wiki when they noticed a section titled Hard Candy, a directory of child pornography links. Disgusted by what they had just witnessed, the hacker quickly worked their magic and removed all links from Hard Candy. Job complete. Well, not exactly. You see, 5 minutes later, an admin on Hidden Wiki edited all of the links back in, and it was business as usual. Upon further investigation, the hacker noticed that 95% of the links listed on the Hidden Wiki shared a digital fingerprint with Freedom Hosting. And when the hacker redirected their efforts, they came to the conclusion that Freedom Hosting had been the home to the largest collection of child pornography on the internet, including the Love Zone, a site where Richard Huckle, dubbed Britain's worst paedophile, was an avid user on. The hacker would reach out to Freedom Hosting's unidentified owner to issue a warning to remove the content from their servers, but they refused. And so 4 hours later, a bunch of anonymous hackers assembled from forum boards such as 4chan, and they began to DDoS attack Freedom Hosting, rendering the service unusable. However, within 24 hours of the attack, Freedom Hosting's owner was able to restore services via a backup. In response, Anonymous issued several more warnings, but the owner refused once again. So a further DDoS attack took place, even after new security measures had been implemented. Was this it then? Were Anonymous about to shut down the largest host of child pornography on the darknet? 337 people, the majority Korean, were arrested as the result of a joint operation carried out by the IRS, Homeland Security, the National Crime Agency, the German Federal Police, and the Korean National Police. It's difficult to find in-depth reporting about the arrests other than a handful of cases. One user who had been a top priority for law enforcement was a man who had been posting fresh videos of himself repeatedly raping a female child. And although this user was able to access content on Welcome to Video without buying Bitcoin, as he had been racking up points from downloads, he still went ahead and did so anyway. Those Bitcoin transactions were traced through Chainalysis, and ultimately, he was identified. US Homeland Security Border Patrol agent Paul Casey Whipple. It was one of their own. A deep dive into Paul's social media accounts led law enforcement to a GoFundMe page where he was campaigning to raise money to legally adopt his stepdaughter. The GoFundMe contained an image of Paul's stepdaughter wearing a specific red flannel shirt tied around her waist. With this information now in hand, the team went back to see if Paul's stepdaughter was the girl in the videos on Welcome to Video. And there it was, that same red flannel shirt that was in the image on the GoFundMe. When he was eventually tracked down by detectives, Paul initially denied the allegations, but later confessed to them. Although he confessed, as of 2023, reports state that he's still awaiting trial. It wasn't just one Homeland Security agent who was arrested as a part of this investigation though, rather two. Homeland Security agent Richard Nikolai Gratkowski, who was assigned to a squad within ICE to investigate gangs in San Antonio, was found to be an avid user on Welcome to Video. In-depth details about his involvement with the site are scarce, other than he was thought to have used Bitcoin to obtain an undisclosed amount of material from the site. He was eventually tracked down thanks to Chainalysis and would go on to plead guilty to 1 count of receipt of child pornography and 1 count of access with intent to view child pornography. He was jailed for 5.5 years in May of 2019. All Department of Homeland Security employees are held to the highest standards of behaviour and ethics. While ICE does not comment on personal matters, the agency is fully cooperating with the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General regarding this issue. Over in the United Kingdom, a then 26-year-old man, Kyle Fox, had been arrested by the National Crime Agency after he was identified as a producer on Welcome to Video. When officers arrested him at his home, he was found to be in possession of 13,000 images and videos of young children, including toddlers, being raped and sexually abused. Kyle was one of the NCA's top priorities as he was posting videos of himself actively raping a 5-year-old boy and sexually abusing a 3-year-old girl. The young children appeared to be under the influence of drugs in the videos. When officers entered Kyle's home to apprehend him, the 5-year-old boy who was being abused in the videos was found naked in his bed. It isn't clear what relationship Kyle had with the children, but what is known is that the children weren't related to each other. Kyle Fox was handed a 22-year prison sentence as the result of the Welcome to Video investigation. He's to spend a further 2 years on license when he's released. You sexually abused 2 very young and vulnerable children. Your offences were detected when a video of the abuse was uploaded to a file-sharing website. It came to the attention of officers who were able to trace you from the data. These are extremely serious and depraved offences. No right-minded person could be other than horrified by this appalling series of offences. In March of 2018, Son Jong-woo would finally be apprehended by South Korean police for owning the largest child pornography site on the darknet. For the allegations, he faced a 10-year prison sentence, but the judge would go on to sentence him to just 2 years in prison with 3 years probation. However, that prison sentence was suspended, meaning he'd spend no time in jail. The harm to society is great, but the accused is young and has no criminal history. He repents. In September of 2018, Son was released after receiving that suspended sentence, but the legal battle wasn't over. You see, an appeal was lodged by the prosecution due to the lenient sentence handed down. They felt it was a smack in the face to all of the victims. Considering the things I knew well, I thought the sentence of the first trial was too light and unfair. The second judge handed him an 18-month prison sentence. Son walked free from jail in July of 2020.
맞아? 보여요, 근데? 나이가 좀 있어 보이는데? 오늘
네.
결정 나온 거 어떻게 생각하세요?
정말 죄송하게 생각하고 있고 앞으로 처벌이 남아있는 것도 다하도록 하겠습니다. 정말 죄송합니다.
In October of 2019, it was announced that Son was indicted by a United States federal grand jury in the District of Columbia for the operation of Welcome to Video. He was looking at decades in jail if extradited and found guilty. However, after a lengthy court battle, the Seoul High Court announced it rejected the extradition request on the grounds that having Son in Korea would be more helpful for the country's fight against child pornography.
I'm not sure this from the movie, because somebody let me know it's from The Sound of Freedom, because it don't look like, this look like real events. Are those Hispanic children? Oh my goodness. That's a shipping container. No. Oh my goodness, it's more.
You heard it here on the Gwenton Show. Protect the children, not only yours. All children are our children. We are the village.
Thank you.